Today we're going to talk about cell phone policies at work. Does your restaurant have one? If not, why do you need one, and how to implement one if you don't have one? So let's get to it. Yes, you need a phone policy. It's a must-have in any restaurant. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a group discussion that I kind of got caught up in online, and it definitely made me think I need to go over this. So a question was asked from a restaurant employee in a group: how would y'all react to a manager taking your phone, locking it in the office if it's seen in your hands? So there was a ton of comments. I think the last time I checked there was like 600 comments, and they kind of ranged all over the place. So some employees said, absolutely not, somebody touches my phone, I'm quitting. Some of them, were very blunt and, I would not work somewhere that had that kind of policy. But a lot of employees definitely kind of agreed. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the comments. So one said, I had a job where they did that and I never thought anything of it. If you are a parent or have something going on, simply tell your manager at the beginning of the shift that you'll be checking your phone. As long as it's not where customers could see, they should be understanding. Okay. One of the other ones said, it really depends. I've had it happen to me, and I've also wished that they would do it at certain places where people are always on their phones. Another one said, I say you should be allowed to keep the phone, but not allowed to be on it. Keep it in your pocket on vibrate, allowed to check every so often to make sure nobody has called, no outgoing calls. So there's a whole range of comments here. So let me just say, from a leadership standpoint, a lot of the employees that are on here commenting that are saying, absolutely not, they're gonna pay my phone bill, I'm not a child, they're not touching my property, all of those things. Most of those are not the kind of employees that I'm going to want in my restaurant. Let me start off by saying that great employees want to work where there are other great employees. That's just the truth. If you tolerate bad behavior in your restaurant, you will run off superstar employees. They want to work in an environment that is fair. They want to work in an environment that is professional. And if you want to keep your top staff, and if you want to draw in more top staff, you can't put up with bad behavior in a restaurant. So, having said that, a lot of the employees said, that it was unprofessional. They didn't like the way that it looked in front of customers. But more importantly, what I saw from a lot of the, you could tell, or like superstar employees, is that they wish that other employees weren't always on their phones. Because what happens if you have one employee that's working, that's cleaning, that's getting things done, you have another one that's always on their phone? It's those superstar employees that are going to have to catch up the slack from not, from what's not being done. So here's my take on it. You absolutely have to have a cell phone policy in place. What is negotiable is what you put on your restaurant's cell phone policy. When I do a policy, I say a mobile device policy that's going to cover cell phones, iPods, watches, anything that has the ability to send and receive text messages, phone calls, videos, apps, that kind of thing. I would definitely include that on the policy. So let's talk about the policy, what you may or may not want to include, and the kind of the different ways that you can go about it. So whenever I ran a restaurant, we had a no cell phone policy, period. And I did see several of these that were in the comments, which means that the employee was allowed to either keep their phone in their vehicle and not bring it in the building, period. Or there was a specific designated spot in the restaurant that they could put their phone up whenever they come into work. So If somebody has $1,000 phone, the likelihood of them wanting to leave that in a hot vehicle all day is slim to none. So if you are going to have a no cell phone policy, you're going to want to have somewhere other than their vehicle that they can put it, because like I said, most people aren't going to want to leave it out there all day. Then that goes back to the manager owner, you know, having the responsibility of keeping up with other people's property. What if it gets damaged? What if something happens to it? What if you have other people that have access to the area? That kind of goes back to that point, that can get on somebody else's, you know, phone and send things that they shouldn't be sending. So I had a spot in my restaurant that was actually in the safe. It was locked. It was just a box and it said phones on it. The employees knew that they had the option to either leave it in their car or to put it in the phone labeled box in the safe when they came on shift. A lot of restaurants have employee lockers. Those are wonderful. That would be my best suggestion, is to have lockers where they can lock personal items in. And you know, on a shift, you may not have to have all that many lockers to make that happen. In my restaurant, we did not have a spot for that. We didn't have personal employee lockers, so we used the safe. I would probably avoid touching somebody else's phone. So I would, you know, open the safe, maybe bring the box out, let them place their phone in it, and put it back up in the safe. I would also make sure that the employees know, hey, this is going in the safe. But if there's anything on your phone, you know, for any reason, you know, nobody should be in the safe, but if they are, I would have it password, you know, protected, and lock your phone. I'm not responsible for it. I'm not touching it. You're putting it in the box. You know, when you're on break, you can get it out of the box. Some people are not, you know, comfortable with taking phones away altogether. So there may be specific policies in place for when and how you can use your phone. So some people say you can have the phone on you as long as it's, you know, on vibrate and it's out of sight. So then there may be, you know, consequences for having the phone visible or for using it. But as long as it's on you and it's tucked away, that's, you know, that's suffice, that will work. Like I said, there's no right or wrong. It just depends on how you feel about it. So some of the reasoning that I had for having no cell phones kind of period in the restaurant were, it could be a safety issue. So if you have people that are, you know, filtering hot grease, that are using automated equipment like slicers, some kind of cook things, you know, charbroilers and things that are automated, any kind of machinery like that, and just, you know, hot things, grills and all those things, you know, they're hot. You don't need to be distracted in an equipment area. And for some reason, people think that they should be able to get away with more in a restaurant than in other industries. And, you know, that's just not true. Drivers can't have their phones, period. A lot of manufacturers can't have their phones, period. So the restaurant is no different. So safety issue. I would definitely put that on the cell phone policy, you know, that one of the reasons to either restrict phone use or to, you know, kind of ban it is for safety issues. The other thing is, like was mentioned, it's tacky. So if you have a customer come in and, you know, they're trying to place an order and you have employees that are on cell phones, customers notice that. You know, they definitely do. I notice that whenever I go out somewhere, and your customers definitely notice it, and you don't want people coming into your restaurant and not being able to get great service because somebody is on a cell phone. Another reason that I didn't allow cell phones to be on the employee, period, even on vibrate, is because you're gonna have things in your restaurant that, you know, are that could potentially be licensed products, procedures, recipes, things that you're not going to want other restaurants, competitors, employees to have access to. So what's going to keep that employee, from going into some kind of manual or recipe, book or whatever, and taking pictures and spreading that content. And, if you are a business owner, have worked really hard to come up with, systems and recipes and put things in place into your restaurant, that's not something that you're going to want easily distributed. So I didn't like the idea of, employees having mobile devices on them for that reason. Another one is, we have all seen or heard of viral videos that can literally tank a business. So there was one, and I forget, it was a fast food place. The employee did it as a joke. Well, there's been several, but there was an employee that did it as a joke. One of them where was the employee got into like the sink, like the dishwashing sink, and like took off their shirt and acted like they were taking a bath, and the manager had walked away or had gone to the dining room to grab something to eat, and a couple of the employees did it as a joke. One took the picture, the other participated in the picture. That went viral, and it almost closed the restaurant. There was another one where an employee wasn't doing it, but again, it was prank. He was acting like he was peeing in some, like a box of chips or something. I forgot what it was, but they acted like they were urinating on food. They weren't doing it, but they took a picture of it, and they made it seem that was how things were in the restaurant. Again, that went viral. And once your business goes through something like that, it is dang hard to get the sales and and the customer loyalty back. So I personally did not want my employees to have the capability to take prank pictures, to take, to make anything seem like it was anything other than, what it was. Having said that, if you have faith in your employees and you want them to have their phone on them, and vibrate, and you just don't want to see it, then that's fine. You do your restaurant however you want to do. But just know kind of the thought processes behind different ways to structure your cell phone policy. But the biggest thing is, you need to have a policy in place. So whatever the policy is, it needs to be the same, and it needs to be fair for everybody. So what this employee was having a problem with that started the whole discussion was there was not a clearly defined policy. So you'll have a manager that says, hey, y'all really shouldn't overuse your phones, but some employees get called out for it and some employees don't. There's not a clear written policy when the employee gets hired stating this is what it is. I have ran multiple restaurants, like I said, with the policy where they couldn't have one, period. And none of mine had a problem with it because they knew when they got the job, when they got hired, this is the policy. You train your employees. If they know from day one, this is the policy, and they see all of the other employees coming in, going straight to the safe, depositing their phone into, a labeled box or putting it in their locker, then it's just not an issue. Where you're going to have an issue is if, you don't have a clearly defined policy. One day you're in a good mood and you walk by multiple employees that are on their phone and you don't say anything to them. And then the next day you're really busy and you get on to the employees and threaten to take up phones or do whatever because you see somebody on their phone. Well, they're confused. They don't know what the expectation is. So you have to lay out the expectation, and then you have to be consistent and fair to all of the employees. And it doesn't matter how you structure your policy, as long as they know what the policy is up front and everybody is held to the same standard. So if you don't have a mobile device policy in place, this is how I would suggest getting one started. Come up with the parameters of how you want your company to handle mobile devices. Make sure that it's written down on an actual policy. Then you're going to have to present it to your crew. You know, whether it's you kind of give them a heads up and say, hey, you know, in 1 month this policy is going to go in place, or in 2 weeks, whenever it is, set a deadline, let everybody know what the policy is going to be and when it's going to be implemented. You will get some pushback. So if you have never had a cell phone policy in place and now all of a sudden you're putting one in place, you will have some pushback. But you have to know this is what I want the policy to be, and just know that after the first couple of weeks, you know, of upset employees or whatever, that you are setting a standard for your restaurant for the future, and that it will get easier, because as you hire new employees that are coming on board, like I said, that's just the policy. And they really won't think anything of it. So the only ones that you're really going to have a struggle with are the ones that have kind of been allowed to do whatever they want to, and now you're coming in with something different. But even the disgruntled employees will get past that fact once they see that it's implemented consistently and fairly across the board. And make sure that you explain the whys. You know, sometimes employees think that you're just putting things in place to make it harder on them or to make their job less enjoyable. Make sure that you explain the safety issues. You know, make sure that you explain, you know, the pranks or whatever. You know, I've literally shown my staff those kind of videos before and said, this is why we don't have a cell phone policy. You know, this was supposed to be a prank and it ruined somebody's livelihood, and this is why you're not allowed to have it. And then, you know, they can totally come to the same conclusion and say, okay, I get it. You know, if I was a restaurant owner, I wouldn't want to do that either. You know, you can get your employees involved in kind of coming up with your policy. You know, at the end of the day, you have to pick a direction and you have to be firm to it, but there's nothing wrong with getting kind of everybody's idea and saying, hey, you know, I need to get a policy in place. What are your ideas? What do you think is fair? And like I said, those superstar employees, they're gonna want to go to the places that have policies in place, because they don't want to be doing that extra work that they get stuck with when they have other, you know, employees that are playing on their phone instead of kind of doing side jobs and cleaning tasks. So I will have a template that you can use for free. I will link that in the comments below to kind of help you get started. I would definitely, like I said, you must have a mobile device policy in your restaurant. It's super imperative. It helps the consistency and the fairness. It sets the expectations. It lets the employees know what they can and can't do at work, which just makes things easier at the end of the day. If you don't have one, get one. Feel free to use my template. Check back here each week, subscribe to my channel, and get more ideas, get more free templates here at April King Coaching. Thanks.